So, Cape Coral, Florida, right? Ground zero for the last housing crash, bubble bursting crisis, etc. It's having problems again. Will this be ground zero 2.0? Who knows? So, welcome to Housing Bubble 2.0 News of the Week, or as I like to call it, another episode of As the Housing Market Turns. Randy Patrick here, putting the realism back into real estate. Hope you're doing well. Listen, since it's been so long since I've done videos, I actually had to go back and watch one of my previous videos to remember what to say today. Okay, so that's how pathetic this is on my little hack channel here. But anyway, lots of fun and games in the news world here because some articles are coming out about the 2008 market crash and looking back at what happened and what's going on now, especially in Cape Coral. Now, my last video, which was my first video in over 16 months, we talked about some of the markets that were slowing down from Redfin and Realtor.com from their perspective and their analysis. Cape Coral wasn't on the list, probably because it's not as big a major metro. It's not part of the top 50 metros in the U.S. I think it's ranked 120 something, etc. But point being that if you guys remember, if you're around listening to or watching what's happening in the last housing crash, Cape Coral had this enormous exponential appreciation back in like 2004, 5, and 6, and then it came crashing down just as hard. It literally was ground zero. So the key is, will this happen again? What's going on here? So there's been a couple articles that have come out. This is out of Newsweek, basically saying that Cape Coral's housing market exploded during the pandemic when thousands of out-of-state newcomers flocked to the relatively affordable Florida town, snatching up for-sale homes and driving up prices. The key here is that between May 2020 and May 2022, the median price for a single-family home in Cape Coral rose from $239K and change to $436,000. Okay, so that's basically almost a 100% increase, right? So it goes to show you what chaos and craziness was in the market back at that time frame. And that was when? That was during the COVID time frame, right? I believe COVID came out in I think, end of February 2020, and all heck broke loose, and markets were capitulating, and people were relocating for various reasons, going to various locations, etc., etc. We don't have to get into that now. But Cape Coral, once again, had massive and quick appreciation. So if we take a look at that, but is it experiencing a downturn now? We're going to go deep into this in a second here. There's an imbalance between buyers and sellers. Well, imbalance meaning there's more of one than the other. So currently, there's way more buyers than sellers available, but buyers aren't buying. So it actually is it's not a seller's market. It's a buyer's market, but buyers aren't buying. So according to this one group here, there's a record 10,000 plus unit surplus for 525% growth, in Cape Coral, and based on listing growth, based on absorption rates, which is the speed or the pace at which homes get sold, you can see that this is a much lower absorption rate. So things are staying in the market longer, and there's more inventory out there. All right. So Cape Coral has reached unprecedented levels of price reduction, with over 55% of listings cutting prices, much more than the 34% U.S. average. So what we're going to see when there's a seller market, when there's a buyer's market and sellers are sucking wind, what's going to happen is sellers are going to drop prices. They're going to give concessions, incentives, whatever, to get things sold, to be competitive, to be better than the next person down the street's listing. All right, simple as that. So you're seeing some changes here in this market. So will the city face a new burst? Well, guess what? It was the center of the 2008 housing bubble burst back in the day, with speculative mania taking over the city in the years leading to the crisis. And I can actually shed some light on this because my first foray into the real estate world in 2003 and 4, when I first started doing real estate, which is over 20 years ago now, was in the Cape Coral market. I bought 2 pre-construction properties, and thank the Lord that I was lucky enough to sell them both before the market crash in Cape Coral. So it says the city has nearly 11,000 homes in foreclosure, about 1 in every 31 households. Now, this is interesting, this 11,000 homes. So my question is, where are they getting these statistics? what's going on here, because if we look at other data sources, we don't see 11,000 homes in foreclosure in Cape Coral. But I can tell you that that could be part of the shadow inventory, so it hasn't really reached the surface yet. These could be non-payments, loan mods, forbearances, whatever, or it could just be data that's been going on that's not captured yet with the data companies. All right. So this next article we'll refer to going forward is from this Norada Real Estate Investment Group, and he's starting to shed some light as to why things are happening in Cape Coral. So it's very interesting. So again, I want to set the stage here. So typically people, when you talk about the housing bubble or housing crash and crisis, they're going to give you reasons why this has happened, right? They're going to talk about the subprime mortgage market. So subprime, crash the market. All right, all the undocumented loans, they call them NINA, no income, no assets, no doc type loans. Those were just given out like candy, apparently, right? Speculative buying and a general lack of oversight in the market. Okay, that's what drove the downturn. Now they're saying, well, we got a different set of circumstances here. We got high mortgage rates, inventory going up, economic uncertainty, and high interest rates. So, how's this going to play out? Well, we'll talk about that in a second here. So, and friends, if you guys could be so kind and subscribe to the channel, that'd be wonderful. I want to get back to the growth mode here and get back to reaching as many people as I possibly can. So, having said that, we'll do a deep dive into Cape Coral's real estate woes, echoes of the past. All right. So here's the reasons, we'll call it reasons why 2008 crisis happened, and particularly in that location in Cape Coral. So speculative mania. Everyone was a real estate expert, buying homes as investments, fueled by the dream of flipping them for a quick profit. Many were naive. Yes, I agree with that. A lot of the stuff happened because it was construction to perm loans. All right. So Cape Coral was this area where, hey, you have all these developers that would allow you to build a pre-construction investment property, and by the time it was finished, you didn't have to pay any of your interest on it. You'd sell it, and you wouldn't be out of pocket money, and you'd just make all this money. So there were many issues that occurred when that hit its peak. The real reasons we hear is the fact that there were so many new permit applications going into Lee County, the building department down there, that they said, you know what, we're not going to issue permits until developers actually are completing projects, and we're issuing certificates of occupancy. So they said, we'll issue a new permit to the developer when they complete a house, like a one-for-one trade. So guess what? You had people who already bought the dream, and they couldn't get permits to build, and stuff ends up going to foreclosure. Bit of a mess. All right. Subprime lending gone wild. So banks handed out mortgages like candy without enough due diligence. Loans with adjustable rates, balloon payments were common. Future shocks. People were offered this at any turn. You didn't. They said if you had a pulse and you had shallow breath, you could actually get a mortgage back in the day. Lack of regulation and oversight. The system failed to protect homeowners and the wider economy from predatory lending practices. So yeah, you had people who had no business getting loans, but they were able to be pushed through. If you want to dig deeper into that, a lot of the market players were complicit, like appraisers and agents and things like that. So everybody was on the take. Everybody was making money. Everything was great. And well, everything is great until it crashes, right? So, you can't just blame one group for the problems. It was a whole set of the whole real estate and mortgage industry that caused all these issues here. And finally, greed and ignorance. Financial incentives drove reckless behavior at all levels, from mortgage brokers to Wall Street executives. So if you've ever watched the movie The Big Short, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It gives you some great insight as to what was going on in the mortgage world. I have so many stories, and I was ground zero for this. I literally remember stuff happening in our office, it's so comical and so out of this world and outrageous, but that's what was happening back in the day. So stuff was going on you really wouldn't believe, everybody. So anyway, that's what happened back there. So when you take a look at that, so again, this is the crisis, this is the crash that occurred back in the day. If we go into it, a deep what we call this, not a deep dive, but go into like a little deeper with the information here. So are we in this, here we are in 2025, everybody calls this deja vu. Have we seen this before? Is it going to happen again? Okay, well, here's some trends that obviously, raising some serious concerns, according to this article. So plummeting home prices. According to multiple reports, situation's precarious. Basically, home prices were down 7.7% compared to last year, selling for a median price of 361K. It's not a good thing for sellers. So yeah, as more market comes on and incentives are given and there's competition, you know what? If you think you have equity or have some equity, you're going to drop and dip into that to actually get a deal done. That's what's going on here. Okay, stagnant sales. So more inventories coming on. Okay, but Redfin claims that there were only 608 homes sold in May of this year. That's down almost 6% from last year, and that's going to increase. Now, again, we're talking May and June data here when they do these, look at these articles and look back in time. So we're in August right now. If you're in Florida and it's August, and actually today is Monday the 11th, so it's actually the first day of school, normal school for most of the counties in Florida. If you've missed the summer selling season, you're SOL. And the reason being because people are buying and selling, closing in June and July, so they can move, relocate, get their kids set up for school starting in August, right? And then everybody's happy. Well, if you're still sitting on a property you can't sell, the summer selling season is actually effectively over. And once Labor Day hits and passes, we're kind of out of what I would call the summer months. We're starting the fall process right now. And, you're just going to be sitting on your property, either reducing price or losing money. Simple as that. So stagnant sales. Shift to a buyer's market, right? Upper hand is swung from sellers to buyers, empowering buyers to snag better deals. So yeah, if you're a buyer and you don't have to be someplace and relocate really quickly and set stuff up here, you got time to wait and pick and choose and work your best deal in and negotiate with a multiple potential properties. So why not, right? Get your best deal possible. So that's a good thing, but definitely it's a buyer's market now, right? Surge in time on market. Obviously, homes are remaining longer on the market for 76 days compared to 59 days from last year. And again, if we're talking about May or June of 2024, like year-over-year data, okay, we're going to have July and August, which is going to be even longer days on market. Now, bottom ranked, this is where I saw this. This guy came across a rather concerning report saying Cape Coral ranked last among 123 mid-sized cities in the U.S. in July of 2025 for their hotness ratings chart. Okay, I've never heard that before. Home or a city having a hotness chart. I'm sure the hotness chart means, whatever, like lifestyle and fun stuff to do and people and places and things like that, restaurants, etc. But again, so Cape Coral, not that exciting these days, all right? So why is it facing the pressure? Well, obviously, falling prices, okay, decline in prices, right? Shift in the balance of supply and demand. Elevated mortgage rates, all right? So we're looking at just under 7% mortgage rates now. No one likes higher interest rates, and therefore it's harder to get qualified for a mortgage, and it makes you think about what you're going to buy. You don't have as much buying power, all right? That's a big issue for people out there. Rates have not dropped, all right? Or they haven't dropped materially enough to compensate for the increase in price points. Simple as that. Economic cloudiness, like obviously we've got a lot going on in the world with inflation, cost of living, all sorts of stuff, uncertainty, economic, political, all this type of stuff that goes on there. Does it affect things? Like, it may not be a direct effect, but it's on people's minds, and people are going to think twice before they pull the trigger on probably the largest purchase they'll ever make in their lives, right? So, it makes you wonder, where's the economy going? Is my job safe? What will prices be like? And don't forget, you've also got things like taxes and insurance, right? Well, Florida, we've got, I jumped the gun here. Sorry, I jumped the shark here. I'll get that in a second here. Excess inventory, both new construction and existing homes hitting the market after Hurricane Ian have resulted in a glut supply. They have, and there's more properties that are damaged that are on market as well too, and going through insurance claims. But the last point, the perils of nature. So obviously we got a hurricane, okay, a couple years ago, right? And we got last year we had some other hurricanes that came through that kind of weren't huge damage on Cape Coral, but still caused some problems. So hurricanes, flood, rising sea level increases, blah blah blah. Long story short, insurance costs have gone up. Okay, you got people who want to sell that can't sell. You got insurance costs that are very, very high that are making buying unaffordable. And obviously, too, when you have a market increase in like valuation from a couple hundred, 200 and changed over 400 grand, in that two-year cycle, 2020 to 2022, you're now going to have an increase in reassessment on property tax, and those costs are going to go up as well too. So between your mortgage interest rates, your high insurance costs, and your high property tax costs as well too. It's making it very unaffordable for people to buy. So all these things, that's kind of like your perfect storm, right? Prices are increasing, rates are increasing, are still very high, values are decreasing. What is one supposed to do? You're in a situation where you can't sell. Maybe you can rent. Are you going to be subsidizing your own rent? How good's your mortgage? And by the way, what I didn't mention as well is a lot of buyers the past few years have taken the FHA mortgage, which is low down payment because it was easier to qualify. All right. So when you're putting 3.5% down, so you have lower credit score to qualify and lower down payment, you don't have as much skin in the game. All right. So you don't have as much skin in the game. You're more apt to go, you know what? I don't need this anymore. I don't need this hassle. I'm just going to walk away. I'm just going to rent because maybe you were renting beforehand. Or if you think about it, you can actually, with all these interest rates and property, the tax raising values and insurance, maybe it's cheaper to rent these days, right? We're going to be at that inflection point once again. So that's what goes on in the marketplace here. So in the end, you've got a location that was, historically ground zero with a lot of history for the previous housing bubble, crash, and crisis. And now we've got the same location in Florida. It's probably the worst location for this in Florida. There are other locations that are having a lot of problems. Florida is losing value. A lot of the major metros are losing value, but no one location is quite like Cape Coral. It's not a bad place. We're doing deals down there. I'm doing short sales down there right now, okay, and some of that general area as well. So there's going to be more and more. So that's one thing to keep in mind. If you're looking to find a cheaper property, then you go to the areas where you're going to have crashes or crises, or we'll call it a swing in home values or some economic change in the area. So not a bad place. A lot of these homes that are for sale. They're not like they're less than 20 years old, or they're in the 20-year-old mark. It's not like you've got all these homes from the 40s, 50s, and 60s going up. Cape Coral was developed by the Army Corps of Engineers when they were dredging the canal system there. So it's kind of a unique location. And a lot of, again, back in the last housing crisis, just before that, the housing bubble was spurred on by a lot of new development and new construction. So, if you're picking up a home in Cape Coral, your chances are you're going to get a pretty reasonable piece of property there. So that's a scoop on that. But again, you're going to have people who are going to say, this is not a housing bubble. All right. Well, to me, or a housing crash is not going to come. So, typically the gurus and the analysts and the pontificators will say, well, when you have a housing crash, you have speculation, all right, you have supply and demand issues, etc. Well, we're going through that right now. Now, and you have, and so you won't have a housing crash because there's no speculation. Demand is bigger than supply, and you've got better mortgages, better qualified buyers. Okay, that's the reason why you won't have a housing crash. Well, now I can tell you that mortgages are high priced. Okay, that's not good. So you have and buyers are not there. And I can tell you that if you're an FHA buyer, you're like subprime, to be quite honest with you. And a lot of people were speculating, buying at from as you said, from 2020 to 2022 with this big swing in prices. You overpaid for the property, so you actually have all the elements of a housing crash in Cape Coral, but people don't want to talk about it. They don't want to admit to it, etc. So again, all these articles are great, but we have the greed and the speculation, and FHA is the new subprime. So regardless of what everyone says, you can deny this till the cows come home. This market is prime for a crash. I don't see any other way around it. Prices will drop further. There'll be some great opportunities there. So 2008 versus 2025 parallels and divergences. Okay, while some similarities exist, there are differences. Again, subprime mortgages, speculative buying, lax regulations. Now you have high mortgage rates, economic uncertainty, and supply cut are primary drivers. Okay, but so what? It can still cause the same issues. Okay, as I said just a few seconds ago, right? Subprime, FHA is your new subprime. Okay, economic indicators are not showing growth, and I can tell you because I'm in the field doing this every day. People are having a hard time paying their mortgages, okay? And more people are behind their mortgage. It's happening again. It's quiet. It's not at the surface yet. I call it the shadow inventory. It's under the scenes, behind the scenes situation here, okay? So foreclosures are at risk, but the scale is way smaller than what we saw at that time. Well, guess what? It's not as small. It looks smaller now because the stats aren't reflecting what's really going on, and they won't. So if you know, if you're in the know and you're behind the scenes, you actually see what's happening, and then you can see the volume. It's going to happen, and maybe even worse, especially in that area there too. Okay, so there you go. So what they're basically saying is that, you know, um, expert insights and predictions. You know, basically people are saying, yeah, we look at this. We're going to have, will we have a crash? No, but we're going to have a decline. Well, we're already in a decline. Okay, and what does one define as a crash? What's the percent decline that puts you into crash territory? That's pretty much ambiguous, right? Is it 20%, 25, 30? Who knows? Okay, we're going to have a crash there. And also, realtors I've spoken to are advising sellers to be realistic. What that means is that take whatever offer you can. Stop listing your properties for high value because you're not going to get any buyers or showings. If you want to move your property, you better be aggressive. Offer something unique for the buyers and be better than the next person down the street trying to sell their home. All right. As far as I'm concerned, Cape Coral is going to have another housing crash. There seems to be no other way around it. All right. There you go. So again, proceed with caution. That's what the media will say, because the media doesn't like to say we're going to have a crash. They'd rather say signs are there, but we're not going to say it until we actually see it. Then we can jump on the bandwagon. All right. So anyway, if you want to see what's going on in Cape Coral, okay, you can pull foreclosure data immediately, pre-foreclosures. Go to gethousingdata.com. That's gethousingdata.com. You will see real-time foreclosure filings, and these are deals that you can go after. And if you want help with them, I'll help you with them as well too. Okay, simple as that. So go to gethousingdata.com. That's gethousingdata.com. Get yourself some information on what's happening in the marketplace with respect to foreclosures. Alrighty, I'm trying to move to the next slide here. It's not letting me. Again, I went over this last time in detail. The foreclosure and distressed property market offers you a lot of sub-markets and niche markets you can go into to find distressed properties. All right. Want more information on this and how to figure this out? I can help you with that as well too. Drop me a line. And that's it for today, everybody. So once again, I appreciate the views, likes, and comments. Please tell your family and friends and share it with them. Subscribe if you're not a subscriber. And look forward to doing more videos and talking to you guys and moving this channel forward. All right. Thanks very much.